family listeners at home and globally. I'm Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. It's Tuesday, 17th October, 2023, the 42nd Tuesday, I believe, of 2023, and it's just about 1 minute after 8 p.m. in the studios at Q95, the big station. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube. Please follow us at Q95 FM Radio. The on-air phone numbers are on the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. Please share the live, like our pages, get the latest breaking news and reviews only on Q95, the big station. We continue to revive in the spirit of graciousness, of love and peace and prosperity and unity, and particularly unity. We want to talk a lot about that tonight among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. Tonight we talk about the urgency of moving away from these individual-centered fringe elements and focus on unity, unifying the people of Dominica of all persuasions under one umbrella around the action that must be taken to get appropriate reformed electoral and campaign finance laws and regulations, followed by free and fair elections on a level playing field to restore Dominica's good name and governance at home and globally from the consequences of the machinations of scandalous passport wheelers, dealers, and scammers, and create the enabling policy environment that will allow Dominicans to use their creativity and hard work to improve their quality of life and living standards under a progressive, caring government. Let's all work in collaboration with whom we know to have a proven track record of performance, of organization, and requisite infrastructure on the ground to mobilize people for critically needed action. It's time for action. I'm joined by distinguished guests. Happy to have Justice Dr. Irving Andre, UW political leader and financial economist, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, and UW President, Mr. Lennox Linton, who absolutely needs no introduction. And tonight, Justice Dr. Irving Andre will hopefully briefly revisit the matter of the election of the President of Dominica and the outrageous, degrading statements of Attorney General Levi Peter against Kalinago warrior, presidential nominee Annette Sanford. We acknowledge the mobilization works of the Rosa Parks Women's Group. In that regard, the Dominica Council of Women and other women's groups and organizations who are rightfully outraged by Attorney General Levi Peters' very unbecoming derogatory remarks. We will review the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, OCCRP, on Dominica's passport peddling CBI program and see to what extent it validates the information that was continuously given to us by opposition forces in Dominica over many years, spearheaded by members of the UWP Team Dominica, and particularly by UWP President Lennox Linton and Dr. Thompson Fontaine, on the passport peddling scandals and failure to account for the billions of dollars that are allegedly being held in foreign accounts instead of being placed in the treasury to advance Dominica's economy and social services like health and education, infrastructure for the people's well-being, for the farmers, for the manufacturers, processing. You know that UWP Team Dominica political leader, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, will also advise us on the international implications of the CBI due diligence failures on Dominica's ailing economy and on the state of the country's treasury, which many allege is deprived of billions of dollars of the people's money. Will the flow of revenues from passport sales begin to dwindle by January 2024? That's just a couple months from now. And are Dominica's passports continuing to be sold to crooks and criminals without proper due diligence? I'm sure Dr. Fontaine will further advise us on the path forward to economic recovery and prosperity in a post-DLP government era, with or without CBI revenues. We'll also review the issue of renewable and, in particular, geothermal energy generation, transmission, sales, and distribution, as we will explore the holistic approach to bolstering economic and environmental impacts, taking into account Dominica's stated goal and aspiration to become a resilient and sustainable eco destination, But what is the current state of this DLP regime's plan for geothermal energy explorations? Has this project hit a dead end brick wall? What is the opportunity cost of the DLP regime having devastated the vital pillars of Dominica's economy in terms of what the people and the country should have gained if the CBI passport sales monies had been placed in the treasury rather than in overseas accounts kept by foreigners and invested instead in agriculture, in manufacturing, in agribusiness, in sustainable knowledge industries and other such programs, since only a small group of a select few people actually benefit from the CBI passport revenues. So I hope that Dr. Fontaine and Mr. Lennox Linton and we can help us with that, the opportunity cost that we missed by not investing our money in those vital pillars of our economy. So why did the DLP regime not use the $150 million spent on geothermal energy exploration when no electricity is being generated, and consider investing instead in solar energy that could have electrified all of Dominica with that money and thereby avoid the consequences of widespread electricity generation shortages that Dominicans are now experiencing with much cost and pain and suffering? Why is it that all people have to suffer so much all the time? What is happening if the promise that MMCE and its owner, Mr. Anthony Hayden, who's also known allegedly by many other names, who was selected as the sole developers of the international airport and other public projects without any public tenders or bidding, and on which over $100 million may have already been spent from Dominica's treasury before the final findings of the technical studies needed to determine the feasibility of the location, among other things, in the first place, of this airport. Although, of course, DLP regime leader Roosevelt Skerritt had assured Dominicans that not 1 cent of their money would come from the country's treasury and that MMC would have been front-loading all of the expenditures on the airport. The question remains, therefore, not that the future of the CBI program looks questionable. Is it likely that the billions of dollars that are being kept in undisclosed accounts overseas will ever be returned voluntarily by those who are the keepers of these accounts overseas? Meantime, I saw a video with a lot of pigs, a big pig farm that seems to be growing up in Wesley. You know, house is well fenced and a big thing, pigs. What is going on there? Is it really an airport project? So meantime, elections have consequences, as we know, and tainted elections, as referenced by the CCJ, have resulted in bad practices and policies, which brought Dominica's economy, its culture, its society, its safety and national security to the brink of destruction, disaster, and near collapse. Poor people are feeling the pinch, and thus making it critical, the case for urgent electoral reforms. It is now becoming even more critical to create that level playing field. So let's talk about what we must do to save Dominica from economic collapse and reverse the negative trend we are already witnesses in agriculture, in manufacturing, in processing, in tourism, energy, electricity, safety, and national security, rising crimes and murders, disastrous foreign policies, and the appointment of unsavory characters as ambassadors, poor environmental, architectural, and cultural practices, and the list goes on and on. Dominica is now potentially about to face even more consequences from developed nations and the international community with respect to visa restrictions and even the potential stoppage of issuance of visas from certain developed countries, which would deal a severe blow to genuine Dominicans and Dominican businesses who wish to travel abroad for tourism, for business, for health, for education purposes. This will certainly affect all sectors and every single one in Dominica and out of Dominica. I am personally of the view that it is time to stop these bickerings in opposition forces and the disjointed individualistic efforts that have no organization structure or membership or followers or track record of mobilizing people, and for everyone to come together under one big tent that is already in place with executive structure, leadership, followers, and move together as one force that can preach with one cohesive message from the same pulpit to some 12,000 people in the middle of Roseau. from the same political platform. I know of only one such organization that exists in Dominica at present, and that would be the UWP Team Dominica, and to a lesser extent, the Dominica Freedom Party. If you know of any others, call tonight and let us know. Tell us, and I'll be happy to acknowledge them. So have the chickens all now come home to roost, as our favorite friend, Justice Dr. Irving Andre likes to say? I will ask all of my guests to express their views on these and other matters, how good governance and a good enabling policy environment can make a difference, and how it is affecting the economy and business in general. So we're saying that sitting on the fence or hiding in plain sight in the shadows is no longer an option. It is much too late for that. Most Dominicans believe now is the time for informed, purpose driven action by unified opposition forces and patriots and large masses of residents at home and abroad who possess the people's power, speaking in one voice for progress and change. So certainly my distinguished guest, Justice Dr. Vingandre, UW political leader and financial economist, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, UW President, Mr. Lennox Linton, will share their views on all these matters and give us an in-depth explanation and understanding of the issues. They will provide alternative approaches, I am sure, to finding consensus on actions that we must take now to secure a sustainable way forward for Dominica's governance or energy system and for the economy and society as a whole. Okay? I want to just kind of pause there on this introduction. I will come back later with some more. But I want to just see wherever you are in Dominica, in the region and globally, please tune in right now, call in, join the conversation, get the answers to your questions, be part of the solution on the big station. A huge shout out, of course, as usual, hugs, love, appreciation. A big thank you to our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, police and fire officers, teachers, doctors, nurses, other public and private sector patriots at home and abroad. We welcome every Dominican and friend of Dominica to the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are tonight, in every nook and cranny, every village, every community in Dominica, in the region and globally. Thank you, Sherwin, as always, for keeping us on the air. Thank you, Lambi, on the console at Q95 tonight, directing the traffic. We will take your calls a little later. The people's voice is always a priority on Q. Call us. We will speak to you tonight. So let's get started. But just before I go to the Dr. Irving Andre to get the ball rolling, let me just give you a quick refresher of some of the talking points that I just raised. One, the curse of the golden passports, the toll on Dominica, the domestic effects, the international effects, and how to get rid of this curse in Dominica. I believe it has to be a change of governance, big change of governance. The imperative appropriate electoral reforms to help secure good, transparent, and accountable governance for Dominica. The emphasis has to be on good governance. Questions on the role of the Attorney General and his vicious, degrading, disrespectful insults meted out to a presidential nominee, the Kalinago woman. So woman power, where is it? We've seen it surfacing with Rosa Parks Group and all the other women's groups. We've heard the Nurses Association. So the women are coming through and we need to give them full support. So we need to know what it is exactly that they're doing to protect the Kalinago warrior and its Sanford and all of the women who are abused by men in power. And so we will maintain contact with them to see how we can further serve them and help them to meet the objective of getting the resignation of the Attorney General, Levi Peter. Is there apparent apprehension and anxiety in certain top government circles about revolutions in the emerging OCCRP reports on Dominica's CBI program? And when will big men stop dancing to dictatorship? So I just wanted to put those few talking points there on the front burner. And I want to express a concern that if the CBI thing really comes to, it looks as if the revenues are already dropping. And I get a sense of fear that sometimes in the first quarter of 2024, we may not see as much flow of revenue from the CBI program. That would be very concerning for Dominica's budget, which relies 60% on the CBI revenues. I would have a very big concern for public officers and for NEP workers who probably will not be able to get paid on time if that comes to pass. So let's hope that this is not the case, because we hate to see poor people suffer more than they're already suffering. Dr. Andre, I want to go over to you for your first 5-minute presentation. So over to you, Dr. Andre. And if you're on with your mic.
Let me say thank you, sir, for inviting me to be among such illustrious folk. Mr. Linton, Miss Dr. Thompson Fontaine, the inimitable Lambi, and show him somewhere out there keeping God on the bastions of democracy. These are difficult times. We discussed electoral reform a few months ago, but what has happened within the last month or two is the context in which we have to decide what type of electoral reform that we need to have to preserve our democracy. We've heard the despicable comments of Mr. Levi Peter in the House of Assembly. Ironically, and even more egregiously, those comments were made against a Kalinago woman. And wasn't there a Kalinago woman who was beaten by her minister boyfriend, and another minister said, "We all support him"? They have been the ritualistic scapegoats in Dominica's history. Those women who were regarded as not marriage material. And as one author put it so eloquently in a book, they have the honor of concubinage. So that ingrained in our psyche is this historical tendency to treat certain racialized women as being less than equal. And that has been worsened and exacerbated by the greed and by the absolute power yielded by those in power. And that is why we have this international crisis today. It stems from the same greed, the greed of selling the souls of Dominicans, the greed of selling its sacred jewels, the most sacred of all being passports, the greed which has engendered a kind of unsavory reputation in every part of the world. You even have articles in Arabic about golden passports. You have articles in the Miami Herald, the Forbes, London Guardian, European newspapers in Switzerland, all indicating that Dominica is for sale. In 2023, a black country. Isn't that what the speaker talked about some time ago? We are a black country. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are a black country which is selling its soul for nothing, and you are doing nothing to stop that hemorrhage. Think of a helpless patient at the Chinese whatever hospital you call it. Its blood is being drained from it. Its vital organs of good governance are collapsed. Those that are left are being sold to the highest bidder. Those which are the most sacred, whether it's the parrots, whether it's the botanic gardens, whether it's those protected lands, they've been given away to foreigners, to white foreigners. Because I heard someone reproach persons like Matt Peltier as making deals with white journalists. Because the persons who are buying those passports, fugitives, criminals, they are blue, they're not white. And this is what we've come to. We have come to the darkest depth of corruption that Dominica could ever have envisioned in its life. But in my view, and just to save some of my 5 minutes, Mr. G, we're at a stage where have to ask ourselves, where do we go from here? And let me make two proposals. What is happening, obviously, is a flagrant violation of Section 76 of the Charter, the Constitution, I'm sorry, which says essentially that all monies raised or received by Dominica, with some exceptions, shall go or paid into the consolidated fund. So it's a clear violation. But they love the sale of passports. You know why? Because Ali Montfared's business associate told us why eloquently in that Al Jazeera report. 90% for them and 10% for the country. And that is why we have the proliferation of hotels by persons who don't have any experience in hotelry, while all the legitimate hotels are forced to languish and to suffer and to die and to go into default. We have mansions just appearing mysteriously. That is what is happening to most of the proceeds of sale of Dominican passports. That's why they love it, because it's feathering their personal nests. And Dominicans are suffering low wages, no living wage, unemployment, no money to fix a roof, no money to set up businesses, no money to send their children to school, no money for agro industry, no money for bananas, no money for the public works department, but an insatiable appetite for monies in mysterious funds in Switzerland and elsewhere. This was confirmation from someone who was in the very belly of the beast. That is where most of the proceeds of sale of Dominican passports are going into, to be used and abused by a few persons. And so we have to ask ourselves where we go from here. There are two fundamental steps we must take. I challenge Dominicans. 5,000 Dominicans is what we need, probably five from abroad, living abroad, not those who would exploit Dominicans by taking passport money for a free ride to Dominica and pocket change and go back, and to saddle Dominicans on the ground with burdens and with hardship. But the vast majority of patriotic Dominicans abroad, let us make a commitment tonight that each patriotic Dominicans at home and abroad would contribute at least $10 to a fund to challenge once and for all the rape of Dominica's treasury. There was some legal research done some time ago, and it confirmed what I have said before, privately and otherwise, that there is a case to be brought to stop the proceeds of sale of Dominican passports from being mysteriously hidden to be used by those in authority. A case can be brought and should be brought, and we should start the process immediately. We should start it last week to raise the necessary funds, to retain necessary counsel both at home and abroad and in the region to fight that fight. And secondly, there is the moral question. Bring all those right-thinking, those Bible-thumping patriots together and drown out the voices of the few religious leaders who are wallowing in a basin of corruption. Bring that moral force to bear on the body politic, cleanse the landscape of the stain of corruption. And finally, the political dimension. That broad tent has to be filled with every Jew and every Gentile, with every those who may have a different perspective, but who are united by one goal, the redemption of Dominica. Let them all say with one voice, I am the resurrection and I am the life. I am here to give life to my country. And I think, Mr. G, I have used 4 minutes and 57 seconds, so I rest my case.
4 minutes and 59 seconds to be exact. So it's a good time to rest your case. But let me just say, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, and I'm sorry that we keep you up so late at night, because where you are there, we know it's not so early. You should have been asleep now. But you're a young guy and you can take it. People like me can't stay up as late as you can. But Dr. Fontaine, I mean, in your first 5 minute presentation here, you heard Dr. Andre, you heard some of the talking points that I put out there. You can see the situation generally in Dominica. But when you add up all those things that we're talking about there, this is just a small country, about 30 miles, or what, 20 miles by 15 miles, something like that. It's 300 square miles, right? What's it? Let's say 20 by 15 or something like that. Just about 60, 70,000 people. And we have all this DEBA. We have all this commerce. You hear, I mean, Lennox Linton still telling us about $7 to $9 billion that's outside there. He made a little change and he revised it the other day, and he told us, okay, it's a couple $1 million less maybe, but not much more than that. So it is clear, and it has been consistent for years. People in the opposition have been saying to the government, bring the money back into the treasury. And you now heard Dr. Andre say there is a case that can be made under that section of the Constitution to force them to do that and to stop keeping the money outside. Dr. Fontaine, your preliminary thoughts on all of this.
Well, Mr. G, good evening to you, and of course to Lennox and to Dr. Andre. Mr. G, I am mad as hell tonight, and I'll tell you why. When I think of the fact that our people in the country continue to struggle to make ends meet, basically living from hand to mouth, businesses shutting down or struggling to stay afloat, our farmers on their knees because they're not able to find markets for their produce. And in the midst of all of this, hundreds of millions of dollars have been generated by this government. And the people of Dominica have only been able to get crumbs from the table, a few leaky apartments that they still don't own. Our hospitals lacking basic supplies. I'm talking about basic as in paracetamol and gauzes and basic things that any hospital system should have. Our schools out of supplies. Teachers having to put their hands into their very narrow pockets to buy chalk and duster and other stuff for their classrooms. Public servants at the very end of the scale. Zero increase after 10 years. And parliamentarians and other government ministers getting thousands of dollars in increases. Stifling duties on the port that our people continue to suffer from. And the list goes on and on. I can go on all night with a litany of reasons why I'm mad as hell tonight. Domlec, a government-owned enterprise, unable to keep the lights on in the homes of people every night. The pain that the country is suffering and going under is intolerable. When our government has minted millionaires overseas, transferred the country's money overseas, government has given priority to foreign firms and companies in Dominica over local Dominicans. Dominicans, second-class citizens right at home. Poverty continuing to increase. It's those reasons, and for these reasons, Mr. G, I'm angry tonight. Because we are in a position that we never should have been, with the kind of monies that we have made from the CBI program, as has just been verified by those reports we are seeing in the international media. Hundreds of millions of dollars, thousands and thousands of passports being sold. I remember many years ago, well, it seems like many years now, in 2012, I was doing a project for the St. Kitts government, and I was there doing a debt project. St. Kitts at the time was one of the highest rated debts in the world, 163 debt to GDP ratio. And I was called in to help the government put together a debt strategy to bring down their debt. And I remember one day whilst I was in the office working, I received a call from the financial secretary. She told me, I know you're not there for this reason. You're there to help us with our debt. But I know your background. I've been reading about you. I know your background in financial economics. And we have these resources we are getting from the CBI program. We need you to advise us on how to invest it so it can benefit the people of our country. That was in St. Kitts. That was in 2012. And at the time, St. Kitts was making $450 million a year in the CBI program. And when I quickly checked the Dominica program, it was $23 million in 2012. And I immediately raised a concern. I said, how it is that St. Kitts is making $450 million a year for their program, and they're making 23 million. And it became evident to me right there and then that the government of Dominica was siphoning away the resources of the people of Dominica, because there was no way that St. Kitts would be making 200 times as much as us. Yeah, probably 50 times more. I mean, 50 times or 50% more or something, but not 200 times more. And that tells us where we are in Dominica. And the theft that's continued over the years, it has just grown. With the more the sale of passports have grown, is the more the theft of the monies of Dominica has gone. And we have this litany of problems in the country. Agriculture is on its back. I heard the farmers crying today about not being able to sell their produce. I've been listening to the public servants complain about not being able to keep their lights on at night, even if they want to, because they have to conserve energy. The pain and the suffering of the Dominican people is unimaginable in a time when we should be rolling in oil based on the amount of money that we get. What has gone wrong? And how do we fix it? And that's the question I want to address tonight as we go on for the program.
Yeah, well, and thanks a lot for that, Thompson. I know that we will get to that. And I did speak. In matter of fact, I heard somebody else, they raised the question if Matt Pelty, I think it was today, Lennox, or yesterday. I think it was a gentleman called Brian Linton. I don't know whether you know him, but he spoke about the question of the opportunity cost. What it is that we lost by not really investing all of these billions of dollars in our vital sectors. And then again, what more did we lose by devastating the sectors that are already highly productive, like our manufacturing and our agriculture, and so on? What really is the cost? I mean, Dominicans need to know what is really cost to them, because something that a little brown paper bag, as my friend Justice Dr. Irving Andre, the little brown paper bag that comes once a year at Christmas time, that cannot make up, Lennox, for all of this that we could have had, as Thompson said. It was green gold in those days. You know, trucks used to be lining up from Cadenfield to the port. You know, farmers were buying transport, you know, cash. Last time we met Dr. Andre, we spoke. Somebody's mic is open. Last time we were here, Dr. Andre, we spoke about Edward Oliver LeBlanc and what he did to uplift the farmers and the farming community and the agriculture sector. So, Lennox, let's talk about this a little bit, because, you know, and I wanted you to talk about this because Thompson mentioned that since 2012, he raised this thing, and in fact, they have him in court for saying that, you know, something was wrong with that CBI program. And then remember people like Angelo Allen talking about it, talking about all this happening in Vanuatu and these places. Then, but you, Lennox, and many other people in the European other political parties in the opposition forces, but you have been consistently talking about this thing over many years now. And you have been bringing the ball by ball commentary on the kind of sales of passwords that we had, the kind of revenue that was not coming into the treasury. You got a lot of flack for it. And I want to refer, before I let you speak, to a little thing that I saw come out today. Somebody sent a thing showing how much flack the opposition has got, and you in particular, as an opposition leader. A lot of flack from the government. But then this person listed all the things that the government praised the opposition for. At the same time, while they put in flack and saying, take Lennox Linton and go with him, throw Thompson and them in jail, that kind of thing. So, Lennox, let me go over to you for your opening remarks on all of this before we get going. You might want to turn on your mic.
Okay, I see everybody back now. Sheridan, thanks for the invite. The the citizenship by investment program for Dominica had a specific purpose behind it. It goes back to the early 1990s when the Dominica Freedom Party was in office. And back in the day, the concern in government and indeed in the nation had to do with the scarcity and the increasing costliness of development finance. So money to build up the country, money to develop Dominica being was increasingly hard to come by, and it was getting more and more expensive. We had, for example, a drying up of the grant funding that was available for many of the development projects that government would have liked to pursue for the country. that's how citizenship by investment came into the picture. It wasn't because some politician had the bright idea, they loved the idea of selling passports. It was almost like we were our backs were against the wall. What were we going to do? And it started with a focus on the economy and building out aspects of the economy that would generate the types of activity that would get people employed and would have them in situations of sustainable livelihood. So they started with the tourism sector and hotel development, where they thought there was some strategic advantage because of who we are in H Island, blah blah blah. We hadn't developed the tourism product significantly. That didn't really work out. It started in 1993. It came, and then I want to point out tonight that when the program began, all of the money was going into escrow for hotel development, and they had indicated some things would happen in manufacturing and so on. It was when the United Workers' Party came into office in 1995 that they put in place the situation for money from the sale of passports to come directly into the treasury. So it was no longer about private individuals investing only in hotels. The country then started getting a direct contribution in the treasury that would go to the development work of the country under the government. When the Labour Party came into office in 2000, it basically shut down the program. And then, thanks to the return of Julius Timothy to the cabinet of the Labour Party, somewhere around 2006, 2007, he convinced his colleagues in the Labour Party to get back into this citizenship by investment for that same original purpose of finding the scarce development capital. And indeed, the good Lord has smiled on us. We have picked up a lot of development capital from the citizenship by investment program through the years under this Labour Party government. Billions of dollars. By my count, in the last 7 years, over $9 billion, from which we have only received 2.7 or thereabout. We have an unaccounted balance of citizenship by investment money in the region of $6.4 billion with respect to the last 7 years that began on the 1st of July 2016. Over $9 billion, 2.7 coming into the treasury, 6.4 remaining out there unaccounted for under the control of friends of Mr. Skerritt. That's one problem with the program. The other problem, of course, is the one that led to the imposition of visa restrictions on Dominica by the United Kingdom, which means that Dominica was operating its citizenship by investment program in a way that were impacting other countries negatively. And for all the rights that we have to sell our passports to whoever we want to sell them to, we have no right to interfere with the global security architecture against money laundering, crimes against humanity like financing of terrorism and human trafficking, etc. But that's exactly where the program has gone because of the reckless way in which we have managed it and the fact that we couldn't care less about our passports ending up in the hands of crooks and criminals around the world. That is what the reporting from the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, in association with journalists and media houses around the world, is finding out and is reporting on, has been reporting on in the past week. But let's go back to July. In July, Suella Braverman, the Secretary of State, is she the Secretary of State? She's the Home Secretary. She's Home Secretary in the United States, in the United Kingdom. And when she spoke about the imposition of visa restrictions on Dominica, she said it came after careful consideration of Dominica's operation of a citizenship by investment program, which showed clear and evident abuse of the scheme, including granting of citizenship to individuals known to pose a risk to the United Kingdom. Much of the reporting of the OCCRP is on years prior to the last few years. But Suella Braverman's concern and the reasons for which they acted against Dominica are now happening now. Dominica granting citizenship to individuals known to pose a risk to the United Kingdom, as a result of which visa restrictions have been imposed on the citizens of the Commonwealth of Dominica. And I mentioned these two aspects of the program: the way in which it is managed and the fact that the money, all of the money is not coming into Dominica. And on this question of the money coming into Dominica, Dr. Andre referenced the breach of the Constitution at Section 76. So also a breach of the Finance and Administration Act of the Commonwealth of Dominica. So this law-breaking activity has been going on for a long time. And we in opposition, as you've indicated, uh, Sheridan Gregoire, have been trying to point the people's attention to the importance of running the scheme properly, transparently, and in an accountable manner, ensuring that the due diligence procedures are followed and they are adhered to. And when the due diligence flags somebody as not being suitable to receive Dominican citizenship, then that should not happen. But it appears that any crook and criminal that wants a Dominica passport, wherever they are, once they're willing to come up with the money, they will find a way. There's a way for them to get it. For a number of years, I've been trying to get the people of Dominica to understand that there is a significant danger in the way that this government is operating the Citizenship by Investment program. And there were years, Sheridan Gregoire, in which the government was actually reporting balances on the Citizenship by Investment account at the banks in Dominica. And no sooner did we start to question the accuracy of those numbers, they stopped publishing them. There was the case of 2016, 2017, when I pointed out in the parliament that the balance that the government was saying on the account, should be on the account, was short by $140 million with respect to 2016, 2017. Because the formula is very simple. The balance you report at the end of the previous year, plus whatever receipts you receive in this year, minus what you spend from the program, should give you the balance. We used that simple formula and found that the government's balance reported one year after the next was $140 million short. From since that declaration, revelation in the parliament, the government has never published any bank balance from citizenship by investment revenues again. And then, of course, you had the development where the international banks operating in Dominica all took a hands-off position for CBI money. They closed down all the accounts, including the government accounts, and they left it all to the National Bank. But significantly, on this question of reporting, the government has a legal responsibility to say who are the successful citizens that apply for, who are the successful persons that apply for citizenship under the program. It's a legal responsibility. Up until 2019, it was observed, not as regularly as we would have liked to see, but it was observed, and names were published in the official gazette. And the final gazette that was published with names of persons who successfully applied for citizenship under the program was March 14th, 2019. It was in that publication of the gazette that Rosamond Edwards, the then financial secretary, disclosed the names of 3,961 persons who had received citizenship of Dominica for the 5-month period, August to December of 2018. We used those numbers in the parliament to show that the revenues reported for that particular financial year, 2018, 2019, were way below what it should have been. As a matter of fact, the revenue should have been in excess of $1 billion more than what the government was reported it received. You know what happened then? We never saw another publication of the official gazette with names of persons who have received citizenship in Dominica, contrary to the law, for 4 years and 7 months. So just to say, I personally, and the party that I am privileged to be part of, we welcome the confirmation being received from the work of international journalists focusing on Dominica and the Citizenship by Investment program, that this program has some serious issues. And significantly, we, the people of Dominica, have been deprived of the proper use of the revenues from the scheme to build out the economic infrastructure, to take care of sustainable livelihoods for the people of Dominica, and to improve the quality of life for the people of Dominica, utilizing the development finance that we took this risk and made the sacrifice of selling our passport for, using it for the benefit of the people of Dominica in a very honest and a very conscientious way. What we have seen quickly is evidence of abuse, not only of the program that it is getting, it is affecting countries like the UK with bringing unwanted criminals into their country using the passport of Dominica, but also that it rather than facilitate the genuine development of the country, it is being used as the ATM of Mr. Skerritt and his friends overseas to do all sorts of things that Dominicans haven't begun to understand the scale of yet. There are the concubines of Roosevelt Skerritt that are major beneficiaries of this citizenship by investment program through those who have the money under their overseas control and can do what they want with it. There, you have a situation where we are being lied to repeatedly by the Prime Minister, talking to us about Anthony Hayden of MMC front loading money to us because we have none, and then he will repay himself from the sale of citizenship. We have enough money that has already been collected that has not come into the revenue part, the consolidated fund of Dominica, to do all the development work that we're talking about.
Let me just stick a pin there because I want us to come back into depth and all of that. And I know in your second round, your second 5 minutes, which you probably took a little bit more than 5. So you took some of Andre's own that he didn't take. But I mean, the point is, I want to come back into depth because we certainly have to go back and look at that, at this report, and more are coming out, which seem to have validated everything that has been said by the opposition over the years. And I think we want to go into some depth into what this report says about what's been going on, so Dominicans will understand that what you are saying and what Thompson has been saying and what other people in the opposition have been saying over the years has been true. And it's these people now, sometimes we believe things when outsiders say them and we don't think when our own people say them. So maybe they can see now that what is happening. But before I go to Dr. Andre, I wanted to go to Lambi and ask Lambi to give the folks the numbers. And Lambi, once you give them the numbers, any calls you have, you just raise your hand, give us a high sign, and we will take the calls as we go along. So Lambi, please give out the numbers.
Good evening, the Global View and Q. The numbers are as follow: 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. These are local numbers. The overseas number is 305-432-9624. Let me run those again. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, and 305-432-9624. Back to you, Mr. G, but there's a call. Hold on. Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
I don't want to interrupt the flow, but I tuned in especially this evening because I think Dr. Andrew was supposed to review the transcript from the House proceedings on September 27, and I didn't hear him say anything about it.
We're not doing that just yet. So maybe you'll hear something about it a little later.
Later, okay.
You should keep listening. Lambi, if you don't have a call, I'll just go right ahead or take your call.
We've got 2 more calls. Good evening, caller. Thanks for there. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening, Mr. G and Mr. Linton and all the others in the house tonight. One thing I was glad about is when Leonard Clinton became the opposition leader. I know you'll have to know about what the passport business is taking place in Dominica, because in the House, his job will be to look to see how much people's passports sold for and the amount of money coming in. Thank you, Mr. Linton. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. They told us you're a novice, but you're not no novice. You're a king of Dominica. Thank you very much, sir, and good night. Thank you all.
Thank you, caller. You got another call, Lambi?
Yeah, there was another caller there. Yes.
Yeah.
There.
So
Good evening, caller. Go ahead, please. You are scratchy. Still scratchy. Try another number.
all right, so Lambi, as you wait for the other call, just interrupt us as the calls come in. We want to take the people's calls tonight. But Dr. Andre, just before I go over to you, I have a first WhatsApp message here. It says, all that you foresee for 2024 as a result of the obvious absence of funds from the CBI program is already happening as we speak. We can no longer say that coming events cast their shadows before them. The initial effects indicating the nature of an event are being felt throughout the land. The event is upon us, Dominica. Dr. Andre, you want to take a call, Lambi, before we go? Let's do that.
Yes. Good evening, caller. Thanks for being there. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Hello. Go right ahead.
Yes, it's unbelievable that Dominicans taking everything for granted that's being pushed down their throats. During the time of COVID, the IMF gave your government money to give the people of Dominica. Up to this day, they never get any money. All the other Caribbean countries got money. Now, the women are going out there to demonstrate peacefully, police with their machine guns and their tear gas. You see the demonstrations are going on all over the world. In New York, do you see police using tear gas on people or shooting anybody? No. But that communist you have in Dominica, before the people decide to walk the street, that's why the people are scared to vote, because he is terrifying them with his police, with their guns and their tear gas. The guy is not, Dominica does not have democracy. So let's stop that crap. Dominica is a full-fledged communist country, whether you want to hear it or not. Thank you.
And thank you so much for that. You want to take another call, Lambi? Go right ahead.
Yes, we do. Caller, go ahead, please.
Me.
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. And good evening to the entire panel.
Good evening.
I want to begin to say, Mr. G, Dominican passport garçon. I sitting on my bed, right, and I'm thinking, Mr. G, that Mr. Skerritt has been getting these warnings a long time, because this is just my belief. This is why he called this what kind of election? A snap election, or this is why he called election. Because if he didn't call election will be around the corner right now, and this report would be a calamity for him. And secondly, I want to say this, I'm not gonna stay long. Since what they call the 60 minutes, or whatever they call it, 60 seconds, these guys wanted to kill Mr. Linton. This is why they said they want to go with him. He's a headache to them, because Mr. Linton have been telling them all through the time this will fall. That way they're doing that thing will cause problems. And so, Mr. Linton, I'm going to conclude tonight again to say thanks to you for service to our country, Dominica. Good night.
And good night. All right. Good night, Dr. Andre. As we will, don't be surprised if we interrupt you a minute. Take a call from Lambi now and then. Dr. Andre, you heard one of the callers talk about women being harassed while just two of them demonstrating on Kennedy Avenue by police officers with guns. I mean, all they're doing is trying to make a statement about one of their colleagues that has been abused and disrespected by the Attorney General. And somebody's saying that these two women were confronted with police, so many police officers, and they came with guns and they tried to move them out from where they were. And what do you make of all of this? What kind of state do we have now? And why do you think all these excesses in trying to prevent people's voices from being heard?
If I may use a metaphor coined by the late V.S. Naipaul, we are living in a free state. And he used it in a very ironic fashion because free in that context mean devoid of any rule of law, devoid of principle, devoid on fair play, devoid on the respect of the rights of persons. Why are they afraid of peaceful protest? For obvious reasons. Most dictatorships have a very sensitive underside. They have a very big inferior complex. Their nose for what is derogatory to them is sharper than that of a bloodhound. They become pompous, self-assured. They're surrounded by persons who sing to them, "How great thou art." You know that fairy tale? Is it Snow White? Who is the mirror, mirror on the wall? Who is the fairest of all? And the fairest of all has to be the leader. He has to have the nicest clothes, the most expensive jewels, the most property, and that feeds onto itself. And what you have is an architecture of intolerance, an architecture of a police state, because that is part and parcel of the architecture which erects this person on a pedestal, which gives him an aura of invincibility. Alwyn Bully had a play in the 70s called The Ruler of Hyrona. It was almost a psychological examination or analysis of the psyche of the absolute ruler. He or she believes that he is, quite frankly, he cannot be challenged. He's invincible. And the literature students among your audience will tell you it is a malady which was explored by Shakespeare in the play Macbeth. Is it Macbeth? I think so, yes. So that is where we are. Two ladies, helpless. Probably not one of them can lift a 5-pound bag of marshmallow, but they are perceived to be a threat. You have police officers. We are mimic men, again using not a Napoleonic metaphor. We mimic what we see on television in other countries. Law enforcement agents dressed in battle fatigues with the ubiquitous little tiny haversack on their backs, going around parading how important and how fearless and how big and bold and bad that they are. And who are they protecting our leadership from? Probably a little yeah here and there, perhaps. Who? No. Not violence emanating or possible violence emanating from Dominicans or persons who have a different perspective. They should be protected themselves from the so-called friends they've made abroad. Those with dubious pasts, those with criminal pasts, those with mafia pasts. These are the real threat to the democracy that we used to enjoy. And this is what we have to do. We have to get rid of that architecture of intolerance that has invaded every crook and cranny of Dominica to a point where two ladies, not disturbing anybody, not blocking traffic, not blocking pedestrians, probably buying a bakes or two from the market. These are the people who become subject to state officers, state agents, dressed in battle fatigues, protecting the state from free protest democratically guaranteed under the Constitution. This is an indictment of where we have traveled to, and this is an indication of where we have to travel from. Thank you.
Dr. Andre, before I let you go, I was wondering whether you had a chance to read some of those reports that came from these reporters.
I did, quite frankly. And again, to the credit of Mr. Lennox Linton, Dr. Fontaine, what they've indicated have just confirmed what these two gentlemen have said so many times before. But you said something which is so typical of former colonized persons. We seek validation elsewhere. We typically seek validation from the former persons in authority who held authority over us, typically from persons European in origin and so on. And this is what we have here. As much as we commend the work of the anti corruption movement and the journalists associated and affiliated with them, we have to say that, quite frankly, they have merely corroborated what our own folk have been saying for the longest of all, going back to Angelo Arlene, followed up by Matt Peltier, by Lennox Linton, by Thompson Fontaine, by Blessings, by Blue, and by Pink. This is no secret. It has just exposed what we should do. We should bound it and bring it, give, what's his name? Father, whatever his name is. Give him a copy and give Pastor, whatever his name is, Pastor BJ, whatever his name is, give them a copy to read for themselves, because they have been part of the architecture of hatred, calling people Dominica haters. They are destroying the name of Dominica, whereas they're hugging and they're pampering and they're dancing in a pool of corruption with the very same persons who are destroying the reputational value of Dominica. That is the problem.
And Thompson, I mean, just to add to that, because I mean, you've read the reports, they're still coming out. But the problem is it's validated so many things. I mean, it's a very extensive report, and it's in so many languages. I saw one in Arabic today, which fortunately they also converted to English. So I got to read it. And Dr. Andre, I don't know whether your mic is still on, but I read the English part of it, and basically, I mean, the gravity of the thing, and we've done things really appreciated what is being discovered and reported by those people. I mean, it's unfathomable that we could be sitting and listening to our leaders saying, assuring the world that our due diligence is impeccable. It is impeccable. We use the best due diligence people in the world. And, you know, if anything comes through, we're going to take away this thing right away. We're going to get them to rescind this passport right away. I haven't heard of one passport being rescinded. Did we hear about Maduke out there getting arrested and case in court? And we still haven't heard a diplomatic passport was rescinded. I don't know if it is. Do you know whether it's been rescinded? I don't know. We haven't heard that. We haven't been told that it's been rescinded. This report brought out 30 or more of these people, and I saw another one today, which is a former head of the Central Bank of Iraq. Somebody who did all kinds of things there. And Dr. Thompson Fontaine, let me just go over to you to tell us a little bit more what you found out in this thing.
Yes, you know, I've been reading those reports. It was bad in 2009, 2010, and 11 when I was writing about these crooks and criminals holding our passports. But what I'm reading now, some of these crooks and criminals then were child's play. You know, I just read one where this particular individual had swindled investors out of millions. It was he and his father. And then he suddenly disappeared. He was sentenced to 17 years in prison, and then he just disappeared. He purchased a Dominica passport, and then he resurfaced in England, opened 3 companies a man wanted in Jordan, in his country. And just endless examples like that. And I remember when in 2009, 10, 11, I was writing about it, the Prime Minister's response was to issue a lawsuit against me, sue me. I was sued. I remember I was in the United States at the time, and I got a call, a knock on the door. I opened the door, and there was a gentleman whom I'd never seen before serving me papers to appear in court, saying that I was tarnishing the Prime Minister's name. And it was very interesting how the whole court system worked in favor of the Prime Minister, because I remember when the first round went through the courts, I recall that a lot of my defense was actually struck off. So where I talked about our going to crooks and criminals and no due diligence being performed and so on, and having all of this, these were struck off. And the judge actually ordered me to pay fees to the Prime Minister. We appealed to the ECCB, to the East Caribbean Court of Appeal, and they reversed everything that was done at the lower court. Not only did they reverse it, but the judges, they were so appalled at the behavior of this judge. They told my lawyer that he could reinsert everything that they had removed, and anything else I wanted to, I could insert. That was a privilege they were giving me, reinsert. And since then, that case has died. And then he ordered the case to go back to the lower court to be heard. 12 years, Jig Jordi. I'm still waiting. But at the time, we were very clear that this program was giving way for crooks and criminals. And I was just rereading an article there, 12 between 2015 and 2022, 12 high-profile criminals who escaped justice because they were able to use a Dominica passport to do it. What a disgrace, but that is not surprising. It's issues that we've raised repeatedly in the past. And at the end of the day, rather than taking our advice and cleaning up their act, and if the government had taken our advice at the time and had done the right thing, they would not be in the position that they're in right now. But because of that, now we are open, we're exposed, our country is exposed, our government is exposed, our people are all exposed, because we are all going to suffer the consequences when the Dominica passport becomes worthless, because no country would trust another Dominica passport. And so, Mr. J, I think we're in a lot of trouble. We're in very deep trouble because this government has behaved in a manner that is contrary to how any right-thinking government should behave. And I think for the most part, we have allowed it in Dominica. We have just taken it. We have allowed our monies to go overseas. We've allowed our passport. We've allowed hardworking Dominicans to lose their businesses because this government has punished them. And the litany of faults and different things that we can go through, it is just mind-boggling. And I really feel very badly tonight for Dominica, quite frankly, for our people. You talked about the opportunity cost, and I was thinking about it because I heard Brian's response earlier, and I was thinking about the opportunity cost. And I was thinking not only the monetary cost in terms of what we have lost, the industry that we have lost, say the agriculture sector that was bringing in over $100 million a year in the past, and now bringing in less than just about $5 million a year. I was thinking about that. But in addition to that, I'm thinking about the human capital that we've lost. You cannot really put a value on that because scores of skilled Dominicans have left the country in disgust. They have left Dominica, or people who would otherwise have stayed in Dominica to work and to contribute to the country. They have left. They have migrated. You can't even put a cost on that. So the opportunity cost is certainly way above the billions of dollars that we are talking about that has been lost to Dominica. At least that is still out there somewhere. Either building high skyscrapers in Dubai or doing other things that we are yet to find out.
And the problem there is that just before I go over to you, Lennox, because I want to come to you on that, it's very important. We have to spend some time on this. Because you see, what is happening, Thompson, is that while we're talking about all this destruction that's taking place with our good name in the international community, you see, the UK, first of all, Canada already imposed the visa restrictions. The UK has now imposed visa restrictions. It would not surprise me. I didn't hear what happened on the NPR program, the Fresh Air program today. I wasn't able to get to listen to it. But it seems to me that officials in the United States and some of the other European countries are hearing all those things because all these reports are coming out in various languages and they really are prominent newspapers, publications all over the world. And so they must be concerned, that I'm sure that they've been concerned for quite some time, because this report is only revealing what has been happening over a period of time. And when they speak about all these Iranians who have had these passports and all these Russians and all these people who have had these passports, obviously they have had deep concern, and that is why the UK put this. My worry, therefore, for us, for the ordinary people in Dominica, is that you're going to get more restrictions. And once you get more restrictions, it means that the people who really, the reason they buy these passports, they can go visa free to how many countries in the world because we're part of the Commonwealth. If they feel that it is this passport and no longer give them that kind of privilege, I believe, I'm pretty sure that they've been hearing about this thing, and probably the sales of those passports is probably starting to decline already. So in other words, whatever is sold already, there's probably revenue in the stream that's coming through for the rest of the year. I would suspect that in the first quarter of next year, a lot of that revenue would decline considerably because of all this kind of negative publicity that we're getting and the bad behavior from these rogues and vagabonds. So it seems to me that we need to be very concerned about what happens from January in terms of the ordinary people of Dominica, the public servants who are promised these increases. Will the government be able to pay their salaries on time? Will they be able to pay the NEP workers on time? Will that airport project will be able to continue? Because that is what it's supposed to be depending on to fund it. What are your thoughts on some of those things here, Thompson?
You know, I was thinking about this, and I'm thinking that if I was a person wanting to get access to this Dominica passport, I would be having second thoughts now, because I'll be thinking now, maybe if I spend this $100,000, I'll probably lose it, because it is quite likely that I will not be able to use the passport for what I thought I would have been able to use it for. Bear in mind, these individuals who are buying our passports are not wanting to come to Dominica. Out of the 20,000 or so passports that have been issued, probably one or two that has made it to Dominica to live or to even buy property in Dominica. They really want the passport for travel. And if I was looking at all of this press reporting, all of this negative publicity, I'd be asking myself a question. Is that a right thing to do now? Should I be investing in a Dominica passport? And I think for a lot of people, the answer to that question is no. And it is very likely that this program will die a natural death sooner rather than later. We've always talked about the program not being sustainable. It has always been my opinion that this is not sustainable, that people will get tired of it, that countries will get tired of it, they will take action. Even the EU warned, remember the EU warned last year. They warned their own members who had these golden passport programs to stop it. You know, the EU was very clear about this, that they will not tolerate this golden passport program. So I think it's just a matter of time before it comes to us and we have those restrictions. And the day the restrictions come in for the EU countries, that is the end of the program.
No, Lennox, here's the thing. The concern, I mean, a few select few people have benefited considerably from this program. So the concern is not about them. The concern is that some of those who have benefited, we're going to have some relics on our hands like the Lye River Hotel. So in other words, all these millions and millions of dollars that have gone into some of the hotels, just as in the case of the Lye River Hotel project, I believe we're going to find some projects that are going to remain incomplete and you're going to see grass growing in them. So all this money, all these largesse, all these billions that did not go into the strengthening the structures of the economy, the major pillars of the economy, your agriculture, your manufacturing, it was a wasted opportunity. And that is why Brian is right, the question of the opportunity cost. Here's what's going to happen if this revenue is not forthcoming to complete those projects. What do we have? What did the ordinary Dominican get? What did they benefit from this passport program that has raised billions of dollars over the years? Where is that money? Lennox, your thoughts? You want to?
Sheridan, first of all, I'm not going down the road of what is likely to happen in January with the potential decline in sales of passports or citizenships. I'm concerned with the amount of money already raised by Dominica, in excess of $6 billion that we have not seen in Dominica. And we need to see it in Dominica. We need to get this money into Dominica.
One second, Lennox. Let me ask Dr. Andre and Thompson to put off their mics so that we can get a clear audio from you. Okay, let's go, Lennox. It looks like
we need to get this revenue into Dominica so we can do the work that it was intended for. Remember, I started telling you that we didn't just go and sell citizenship. We would sell citizenship to look for development capital. We have it, billions of dollars. And we have transferred it to a few individuals, friends of the Prime Minister, to do as they please with it. And the Prime Minister is giving them special arrangements, he says, to front load money to us for major projects and then refund themselves from the Citizenship by Investment program when they already have more than enough Citizenship by Investment billions under their control to do all of the development work in Dominica. And what has to happen now? Roosevelt Skerrit has to come clean with the people of Dominica. If he's not going to do it willingly, he's going to have to be forced to do it because this is not his country. This country belongs to all of us. And it is absolutely outrageous and unacceptable for one man to be holding that much revenue belonging to the state and depriving the poor people, the poor struggling people of Dominica, the benefit of that money being utilized for their best interest. So now he must indicate that there's a problem. He must admit that there's a problem, as we have been telling him for years. And now the international journalists, the Consortium of International Journalists, and the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project is confirming we have problems with the numbers, with the revenues that you're bringing in. Notice that up till now, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project is focused on 7,700 citizenships that have been sold between 2009 and 2022, because those are the names that they saw in the Gazette. But they also tell us that names have not been published in the Gazette for a very long time. I'm telling you tonight, it's for 4 years and 7 months, there has been no publication of any names in the Gazette. And let me tell you what has happened. In those 4 years, we have had 2019, 2020, no reports of any names in the Gazette, but 4,020 citizens purchasing our passports. 6,188 in 2020, 2021. 2021, 2022, 6,378. 2022, 2023, 10,501 persons purchasing citizenship. So we have gone past the 7,700 that the international journalists have confirmed through counting in the Gazette from 2009. 4,000, 6,000, 10,000, that is 16,400 plus 10,000. For that 4-year period where we saw no gazettes, we have almost 30,000 people have purchased citizenship of Dominica. The revenues from those sales are significant. Now, another point of importance is the extent to which the propaganda machine for the citizenship by investment agents for Dominica have come out pushing back against these international reports and even trying to suggest that the numbers and trying to suggest that the reports are unfair and biased, etc. I just want the people of Dominica to understand tonight that all of that pushback we've seen from the Associate Times and from WIC News and from all of the other propaganda rack sheets of citizenship by investment agents who surface at election time to ensure that they do their little bit, they do their bit for the government to succeed in all of the islands where you have citizenship by investment programs and all of the publication like IMI Daily and so on. We have paid already, Dominica's already paid for that pushback against their interest. How? In the last 5 years, Dominica has spent $440 million on CBI marketing fees. $440 million, an average of $85 million per year on CBI marketing. It is that money that is now paying for all of the propaganda work on behalf of citizenship by investment agents, who I understand are so angry with the potential loss of their revenue from the sale of Dominican passports that they're ready to order hits on Dominicans who they perceive to be standing in their way and who they perceive to be speaking up for transparency and accountability in the investment program. Roosevelt Skerrit needs to come clean with the people of Dominica, or forced to become clean with the people of Dominica, and we have to enlist the support of the international community, the United States, the European Union, China, in ensuring that the money that is being held by Roosevelt Skerritt's friends overseas from the Citizenship by Investment Program is immediately returned to Dominica, as the EU has said to us it should, but which is consistent with our constitution and our finance laws here in Dominica, that all revenues raised from the program by law must come into the consolidated fund and must be spent from the consolidated fund. For that to happen, Roosevelt Skerritt must break ranks with those he has colluded with in the unconstitutional, unlawful practice of holding or privatizing our citizenship money and holding it in foreign accounts. He must agree that that is wrong and that needs to be discontinued. And once he breaks ranks, Dominica can go to the international community for the support to ensure that we get our money back from this gentleman and these people who are holding it unlawfully overseas. Then we get to work with doing what it is that that money was intended for, building out the economic infrastructure of Dominica and ensuring that the people of Dominica have sustainable means of livelihood. That's where we started, but we stopped under this administration to put the lion's share of our hard-earned money that we've sacrificed greatly for, to put that money in the hands of.
Can I just interrupt you 1 minute? Lambi, did you want to take a call?
Yes, we've got two calls coming in. Good evening, caller. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening to everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening to all Dominicans, the panel, the Global View, Mr. G,
Good
Dr.
evening.
Fountain, yeah, Mr. Linton and Lambi and everybody, I just want to thank the international journalists for exposing the racketeering of Roosevelt Skerritt and his government. Yeah, and they say, it wasn't easy. They had to do 7 years of investigating. They couldn't find papers. They had to go deep, and it wasn't printed, and they had to just go. And the journalists from Guardian, and they had to do their very good work. I want to congratulate them. All what they have been saying in Dominica, the Patriots, all along for years. This guy is a corrupt guy. He's selling passports to enrich himself and his family, and the CWO wrong the word. He says CWO. They have a music track. Is CWO in, and the people is in misery, no work, no employment, no light, no water, and Dominica is a failed state. And the people need to rise up against this guy immediately, and we have to take our country back. Yeah, thank you very much.
And thank you so much for that contribution. Lambi, you want to take a call?
Yes. On the overseas line, please go ahead.
Good evening, Dominica.
Good evening.
Good evening, Sir Linton. Good evening, Mr. Andre. You
Good
know
evening.
what is sad about it? A man like Skerritt has so much God. Together with the police, Dominica, they get a guy in Choxy, they brought him Dominica. Yes, they are word. He said true pool. He tell his supporters if UWP coming from there, don't take hot water and send on them. He go overseas, he gets free missionary brought at Mr. Linton home to plant false witness. So you can see that's a man with a lot of God. But Skerritt is a stupid fella. Most of what I hear those journalists is saying, I believe England must have given them a lot of intel of what the reason why they stopped Dominica with their passport entering in England. So I am saying, the more Skerritt say, like he not say nothing, is more pressure on Dominica, because the world wants Skerritt to come out, but he afraid. Skerritt is a crooked guy. Mr. Linton says 43,000. If a man accuse you of selling 43,000 passports, you're not saying a word. A man accuse you of telling you have 10-point-something billion dollars. You still not saying a word. This man is as guilty. I sentence Skerritt to 150 years hard labor in jail. God bless Dominica. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, caller. Lambi, you want to take another call?
Yes, this caller, please go ahead.
Hello, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening to
Good evening.
all the men on the panel.
How are you?
This is Boots on the Ground.
Okay.
I'm listening to the program. I'm very interested in what is happening and what is being said. But I just want to draw to the attention of you people that's out there. We had a protest on Friday. And in the protest, that was the women protest, that the AG must go based on the accusation he had and the way that he ridiculed our contender to the president seat. After speaking on the podium, on the mic, I was confronted by two Arab-looking guys. And the guys came to me and asked me direct, why are you all saying so many bad things about the people buying the passports? I said, because the passports been sold to rogues and criminals outside in the Middle East. And these people are committing crime and not sending the money to Dominica that it could go back to Dominicans. He said, do you know that those people that you're talking about are people that are helping to liberate countries that is under pressure? I said to him, this country, Dominica, is now under pressure. And the problem is the government is selling our passports to people out there that are doing crimes on the criminal line. And the Dominica government is not taking heed to it. The guy tell me he knew nothing about that. I asked him, are you all listening to the international news? I say right now on the international news, there's an expose about Dominica and the rest of the countries selling CBI passports. And the expose is saying that these countries are selling passports to rogues and criminals. So what I'm saying, or what we were saying there tonight, is it not right? He said to me, I doesn't listen to the international news, but what you're saying there makes sense. And he gave me a knock and walk out. I want to say to our Dominican people that we doesn't know who these people are. The records are saying that the passports been sold to rogues and criminals, vagabonds on the outside, and some of them coming to Dominica. These people in the Middle East, which is in Israel, there was a celebration going on when the people went and they stormed the celebration. And innocent people is paying the price. So when these people say that they are helping countries to liberate countries, I am asking if this is a way to liberate countries by killing young children and innocent people. But I want to go a little further with what I have to say, according to what I'm listening to. We need to be able to find a way to take this government to a court, not a Dominica court. Because in the Dominica court, we know what is happening whenever you take this government to court. But we need to find a way to make this government account for the money that they are stealing and keeping outside of Dominica that belongs to the treasury of Dominica. And the criminals that they have been selling the passports to, that is having our passports, to be able to stop those passports from being effective. We have to find a way. And while you men are there discussing, you guys are from the top rank, I believe some of what we need to be able to find is how we're going to take these guys to the court to challenge them and to put a stop. Because other than that, we can keep talking, these guys are not listening, and I fail to listen to anybody telling the government they must do this, they must do that, then they must walk out. the government must go. They need to go in order that other people can correct the ills of this government in Dominica. I thank you and good night.
And thank you so much for that. Lennox, let me just go back to you because I want you to complete what your presentation. But in the meantime, you can see some of the questions that are coming up. The questions, for example, can this regime be taken to an international court for crimes, to face charges of crimes? You mentioned a number of things already in your presentation a moment ago. You talked about getting these guys to bring the money back into the treasury. You might have some ideas of how best to do that, but it seems to me it's going to take quite a bit of effort for that to happen. Certainly, we'd have to have the support of the international community, who is very concerned, and they have the resources to find and then. Alam, you want to take a call? Let's take a call. I'll come back to you, Leonard.
Caller, please go ahead. Caller, please go ahead with your call. Okay, there's one here. Please go ahead with your call.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
You know, Mr. G,
Yes.
there are many recognized organizations in Dominica. And one of those recognized organizations is the DAIC and DEF. DAIC is Dominica Employers Federation, that the business sector holds. All right? And we are hearing nothing at all from that organization, the Dominica private sector. Nothing at all. Apparently, some of them, or the majority of them, depends on the government for a little handout. And maybe that is why they do not want to talk. But if today the opposition gets into something illegal, then they are busy saying something that will discredit the opposition. But they don't seem to be concerned as to what they are hearing and what the government is doing. It happened in the 70s, it happened in the 60s against the Dominican Labour Party. It happened in the 80s against the government of the day. Maybe at that time there were private sector people with backbones and it's testicles. But now we are hearing absolutely nothing from that private sector organization. Or even recognized organizations in Dominica. They all depend on the little people like me and you all who are speaking to say something. And I'm sure they are listening tonight, but they will not call to express their concern. They will not call. And these are recognized, so-called recognized organizations in Dominica that Dominicans, hold in high esteem. And they have to say something. They have to be provoked somehow to say something. And maybe Mr. G, you might want to invite a few of them on your program.
Well, I would certainly do that, and I hope that they will be willing to come. So thank you so much for that. I will try to invite some of the organizations, representatives, to see if they would come. Lam, you want to take another call before I go back to Leonard?
Caller, please go ahead with your call. That person.
You've lost a call. So Lennox, I was saying that you did indicate. I take the call, Lambi.
One more try. Caller, please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to the panel.
Good evening.
Gentlemen, we have been speaking and speaking. As I always say, the year is about to end and we are still speaking. We should be planning now for how we're going to have that revolution going on so we can wake up in 2024 to a new Dominica. I don't think we should have this year ending and we don't have a new Dominica in 2024. We need to start planning how we're going to get those people out. Thank you very much.
And thank you for that comment. If you don't have a call now, Lambi, I'll go back to Mr. Linton. So Lennox, yes, this is the caller was kind of also asking some of the questions that I'm asking, because obviously one of the things you indicated is that you'd hope that the international community can assist to put some pressure so that we can get the government, the regime, to sort of distance themselves from their cohorts, so that we can get this money back here. But it's not going to be an easy task to do that, obviously. So it's going to take some considered effort to get the international community to agree that there is so much, and I'm pretty sure they have sources that they know how to find those funds, and they know how to put a freeze on those funds so they can be used. And I'm pretty sure they would know how to bring those funds back in the treasury, as the EU was suggesting to us. The money should come to the treasury. But I know it's going to be some efforts. I don't know if you yourself have any ideas as to how the international community can assist to be able to bring back those funds. And so these are some of
the international community, Sheridan, is assisting. United Kingdom has said it is not happy with the way this CBI program is run, and so it is going to impose visa restrictions, not on Roosevelt Skerrit alone, not on the members of his cabinet. The UK is imposing restrictions on all Dominican citizens. Right? And so the citizens of Dominica, resident in Dominica, and those who didn't have to buy a passport are the ones who are paying the price for the reckless way in which the Citizenship by Investment program has been administered, managed by this Labour Party government. So here we have the British now telling us, the people of Dominica, you have a responsibility to get this right. The European Union has said, bring in all the money into the treasury of Dominica if you want us to be happy with your Citizenship by Investment program. That's guideline number 5. So the international community is showing the way forward for this program, which is what we have always pointed to for the security and for the effectiveness and usefulness of the program for the people of Dominica. We have a situation as well where all of these international journalists, in association with the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Agency, have collaborated to put the focus on Dominica's Citizenship by Investment program. The missing element in all of this is, what are the people of Dominica prepared to do? With all of this information available to you, with all of this evidence that your interest is being injured, that you are sinking deeper and deeper into poverty because of the abuse of governance in Dominica, because the abuse of your resources by those who are sitting in government, you sit down doing nothing, expecting that the international community is going to do this and it's going to do that. Even when they're doing this and doing that, we don't recognize it. You know what we're doing? We are now asking the journalists who have reported to explain to us what they are reporting and to tell us what it's going to mean for us. That's where we are right now. And unless we understand that we have a responsibility, and unless we look at the rest of the world and see, in places where governments change, where people's interests are being injured by poor governance, it takes numbers to get up and go out on the street and confront the power that is oppressing you for change to happen. We can sit down and we can talk, and people will consistently call and say, okay, you all are talking too much, let's have some action, but where is the action going to come from? Sheridan Gregoire, as we speak, we spoke about a front-loading arrangement for the construction of the international airport through Anthony Hayden. He will front-load his money, we'll pay him back. Does Dominica understand that we have already spent $370 million on this international airport? We spent $292 million at the end of last financial year, which closed on the 30th of June. And we have already spent an estimate of another $78 million, $80 million thereabout. We're up to $370 million spending on an international airport where the money was supposed to have been front-loaded by Anthony Hayden, and we're supposed to have paid him back with the sale of passports. Where is this money, this $370 million that we spent, coming from? The Treasury of Dominica. So what is the front-loading? Where's the front-loading, and how is Anthony Hayden being paid? Where is he being paid from? In the meantime, we've spent $370 million, but we have not completed the soil studies. So we still don't know what we can build there. We have no designs. We have no. I mean, if this wasn't so serious, it would be a big joke, you know. In the meantime, people are making money. Pig pens are being built in Palm Tree on lands that are supposed to be allocated to the set aside for the international airport. You have pig pens, pig palm being growing up there right now, and $370 million later, there's still no soil study, so still no scientific basis on which to know whether we can build an airport in that location and what will it cost us. There's no design. Where's the design of the airport? But we've spent $370 million of the people's money. What is this? Where else in the world does that happen? And the people knowledgeable about that, knowing fully well that their resources are being mismanaged, they sit back waiting for the next piece of entertainment that is going to come by way of a scandal to drop, by way of somebody else telling them how corrupt and incompetent Roosevelt Skerritt and his cabinet are and how incapable they are of running the affairs of government. When is it going to stop?
Well, let us take a look at that, Lennox, because it's obvious the international community is aware of what's happening. The reporters, even we've been saying it for a long time, but the international community now has asked these reporters to do this. They've done it, and the reports are out there. So they've verified and validated all of what we already knew and we've been saying for years. The question is, what is the next move to get somebody to take some action so that, because I believe if in order to get the regime to distance themselves from their cohorts so that they can decide to bring this money in, some action has to be taken. I believe it has to come from outside. In the meantime, whatever action has to come from inside to convince the international community that don't think it's serious. There has to be some leadership to galvanize that support, bring 10,000 people out there, and to let the international community see that Dominican is serious. Dr. Andrew, you wanted to say something on that?
Well, that's precisely the point. Now, just just as an aside, now one of your callers has raised the question as to the legality of the presidency and so on. Mr. G, you may want to give some thought to having a special focus on that issue, the presidency, the constitution, or the whole question of the state of the constitution in Dominica. You may want to devote probably the better part of one of your Tuesday night sessions on that issue, so that at least we can give the subject the attention that it deserves, considering it's 9:46 or thereabouts. What was your question again? Oh, the question of leadership. I agree with you totally. Dominicans on the ground, they want to be assured that they are ready to openly and publicly stake their claim on the whole question of democracy and good governance. I appreciate the points made by Lennox, but I think what those who thirst for righteousness in government, I think what they have to realize is if there is an inertia on the ground or myopia or a fear, it is partly because there is a sense that the leadership has not coalesced into one entity to give them hope that, yes, I am ready. I am ready to take that bold step. And I think that is what we as a community should be working on right now, to provide that seismic leadership, that transformational leadership, which is not to suggest it doesn't exist. It exists, but we have to bring it out. And I think that might be the straw that will break the camel's back. Now, what more evidence do we need, except if you're a certain pastor, that things are fundamentally wrong in terms of governance in Dominica? What more evidence do you need that the monies generated by the sale of passports is not going for the benefit of the people who need it most? It's going for those who get $30 million compensation. It's going to those who are building mansions all over the place. Those who have property in their auntie's name, in their baby's mother's name, in their cousin's name, in their power name, in their makume's name. That is where it's going. while the people, what they get is substandard housing where the stench of sewage besieges the landscape. And they cannot utter a word, but they have to be given hope that the time, the fierce urgency of now requires them to step out boldly behind the leadership that all those who have a stake in Dominica's future can give them. So I appreciate very much what Lennox is saying, but I share your view that part of the problem has to be one of leadership, and we have to address it head on because we all can play a role. We all can't play the same role, but we all have to play a role in providing hope and inspiration and hunger in the people, those who thirst for righteousness. We have to make them know that now is the time I can step out boldly without fear of trepidation, without fear of recrimination. Now is the time to sing redemption song. Now is the time to take my step by faith with Lazarus. Now is the time to say I am the resurrection, because I will be involved in the resurrection of my country and in democracy in Dominica. So it is a symbiotic relationship between the apathy of a people and the leadership that they thirst. But everyone has to play a certain part. We cannot wait for the usual voices, whether it's boots on the ground, whether it's blessings, whether it's blue, whether it's Lucille, whether it's Lofty, whether it's Zai Manuel, whether it's the program on Friday night that I listen to all the time. We have to realize that no white knight will come from abroad to save us. Remember, the CCJ warned us. The CCJ gave us an indication of what they think. No other election should be held with those stains. These journalists are telling us what we already know. It stinks to high heaven what is happening in Dominica. What more message do we need, Mr. G? Huh? What more ammunition do we need that to wage this moral crusade? There are people who will step up if they believe that the time is right. And the time cannot be better than now. The fierce urgency of now. Thanks.
And I completely agree. The fact of the matter is, there is enough evidence. There are enough issues. I think what I said at the beginning of the program in my introductory remarks, and Thompson, I'm going to come to you for that. I did indicate that at this time, right now, the urgency of now, as Dr. Andre is saying, is for everybody to come together under one big tent. And I did indicate that people should call me tonight here and tell me if what I said was incorrect, if there's another bigger tent than the UWP Team Dominica at the moment. That is the organization I know that is structured. And that is, let me come back to you, Tom. So let's take a call from Lambi.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead with your call.
Yes, good evening. The people are in what you call a political coma. Your prime minister have them in a coma. Your so-called prime minister. The guy is a complete idiot. In any civilized country, Skerrit would have been arrested. Your police commissioner would have been arrested. The police are encouraging and tolerating all the illegal things that are going on in Dominica. And the thing is, the people must come out. But they're waiting for people to come from North America or somewhere to come on the streets and demonstrate. They are down there, block the roads, do something to save their country. Merci, monsieur, bonsoir.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. Now, here's what I wanted to say, Thompson. I don't think you're going to get this unless everybody comes, all the opposition forces come under one tent, on one platform, speak with one voice, with a common message. You want democracy, you want good governance, you want to eliminate all this corruption, you want to all this bad behavior that's giving the country a bad name. You want to eliminate all this pain and suffering, all this hunger, and mendicancy that exists in the place, all the unemployment that exists here. Everybody needs to come under one tent. I have not heard anybody tell me that there is a better organized structure right now in place in Dominica. As Dr. Andre said, it doesn't have to be something new. It can be something that already exists, but it has to be strengthened. And it must embrace everybody under one big tent, because it's obviously going to require raising funds. Now, if you have 20 different people trying to raise little money by themselves and everybody split all, it's not going to work. You need one organization. Everybody decided we're going to go under that umbrella organization, and we're going to be out there selling that message, and we're going to mobilize to bring 10,000 people. Fix a date. We're going to bring 10,000, and then we're going to raise money from at home and abroad to bring help to mobilize and bring 10,000 people. Politics is about perception. It is only political parties that are going to win an election because they're the ones that put up candidates. It's about perception. And if the opposition forces can appear to be united in Dominica and they can create a 10,000 people out there, I think a lot of the people who are intimidated, who are concerned, who are fear, they will take a little bit more solace in the fact that there seems to be something new that is coming on. I think that the people of Dominica are hungry for something else, something more progressive that is going to improve their living standards, their quality of life. Thompson, your thoughts on how do we do this to bring these people together in these numbers, raise this money, and encourage this unity of purpose to bring everybody, attract and embrace everybody under one big tent, and to deal with that message and to raise funds to get people out?
You know, Sheridan, that's a very good question, and certainly a good topic for discussion tonight, because what we really need right now is unity of purpose. We need everybody to be basically saying the same thing, speaking the same language, and not people moving in all different directions. And I believe that the group that is best able to do that right now, to lead that charge, is the United Workers' Party, Team Dominica. And that is why we encourage people, you know, to really let us all get together and fight this, you know, because at the end of the day, we have to be able to draw not only opposition forces, but even the many laborites who are right now within the Labour Party who are thinking, well, there is no other way. It's true, you know, spies and oligarchs and criminals have all Dominica passed. So by the end of the day, it is that same money that allow me a little apartment building, or that allows me to send my child to school and so on. You know, people at the end of the day, politics is very personal. So there are a number of Dominicans, because of the condition that they're in, who believe that the Labour Party for now is the only answer. These are the individuals who need to be coming out. These are the individuals who need to say, well, you know, we can do better. You know, our lives would be infinitely better off if we had better leadership in the country, if we had a group of people who were concerned about the country and committed to its growth and development. Because this particular government is anything but. I mean, how do you explain living these millions and millions of dollars outside of the country when people are suffering? When you have no supplies in your hospital, no supplies in your schools, when you cannot even afford to give a raise to your public servants? How do you explain that to the people? So every single Dominican need to stand up. I mean, now is not a time for us to think of party. Now is the time for us to think of how we can together, you know, call for change. And the changes that we are calling for, we need, obviously, and quite most importantly, we need to get those electoral reform legislature. We need to be able to, for the electoral commission to begin the work of cleaning up the voters list, re-registration of voters, issuing of the ID cards. All of that work needs to be done, because at the end of the day, whatever track we take, we are going to have elections. We are still a democracy in Dominica. We are going to have elections, and people still have to vote for a government of their choice. And I would like to make a special appeal tonight, Mr. G, to all of Dominica. Let us not go in different directions. This is something that concerns every single one of us. We have heard the reports. We've heard the fact that our small island of 70,000 is contributing to destabilizing world governments. We have contributed to spies. Right now, there are Russian who, as the reports have indicated, Russian spies who have Dominican passports and have slipped quietly into countries where they would have a difficulty going before, because they now have a Dominican passport. They're able to slide in, you know, under the radar. We have, as a country, have contributed to that insecurity in the world. So it's a big issue for us as a nation. It's a big problem, because at the end of the day, we are all going to be responsible for whatever actions those individuals take. We are going to be responsible. So what we need to do is to unite our efforts and to continue to call for this government to do the right thing, clean voters list, voter ID cards, and let us begin that process of removing this government and ushering in a new dispensation for Dominica. We've suffered for too long, over 23 years of this government. That is more than enough. We've suffered for long, and we really need to put Dominica on a path of growth, on a path of sustainability, on a path of a better way of life for every single Dominican.
I certainly subscribe to that, Thompson. And Lennox, I wanted to go back to you for a moment because it seems to me that the next step, as the callers have been saying and recommending, the next step has to be to convince everybody around us, all of the opposition forces, to come under one big tent, one umbrella, with one platform. In other words, our specific individual interests cannot be greater than the interests of the entity, of the country. We see what is happening to our country, our economy, our good name. We can see what is happening there. That has to carry more weight than any specific ambition that anybody might have to do anything in a scale somewhere on the side. It seems to me it is important to be able to appeal to everybody to come under one big tent and to sort of set a date that we go, you know something, we're going to have a mass gathering by so and so date. And we're asking everybody, now we're going to raise funds. Whatever funds that's required, let's raise it, get the number. And if people are committed, tell them, listen, get involved, get together, and let us all subscribe to this, and let us get everybody at home and abroad to contribute to that so we can have the funds necessary to start mobilizing people and bring them out so people can see there's a serious movement on the ground. People are supporting it, and the numbers are there, because once you do that, a political party can say, these are the numbers that we can depend on to provide the votes in Dominica. And so clearly, as Thompson is saying, yes, the electoral reform is very, very important, and it needs to be put on the front burner, and every effort needs to be made to ensure that the appropriate reforms, you get the appropriate reform. That is why I think the mass gatherings are important in the first place, to make sure you make the point to this regime that the appropriate electoral reforms and regulations is what's required, not just anything that they want to do. From what I heard, Matt had a recording of something on an interview. It's not just if you want the appropriate electoral reform. Dr. Andre has given us some guidance. Many other people have contributed to that. We know what the proper reforms have to be. So Lennox, I wanted to put it to you because I have gone on the limb tonight, and I have said to the world, I do not know of any other entity, political entity in Dominica that has the organization structure, executive in place, having minutes, having meetings and minutes, organizing stuff, raising funds, and bringing out 1,000 people, 2,000 people. I don't know of any other organization that has been doing that over the last few years. So I'm saying to everybody else, come under that tent. And I'm saying to the European Team Dominica, your name is Team Dominica, embrace everybody. Bring them under that tent, because everybody's hurting and they're looking for something that they can coalesce around. I'm saying that is the next step, I think, and I think our callers have been asking for that. Your thoughts, Lennox?
The idea of United Workers' Party Team Dominica was born out of a recognition that we had gone past the stage where we should be looking at blue Dominica, green Dominica, red Dominica, yellow Dominica, or some orange or whatever color Dominica, but really should be focused on the commonwealth of Dominica, whoever we are, wherever we are. And to be honest with you, Sheridan Gregoire, I'm not sure what is it that is standing in the way of this so-called unification of purpose within the resistance movement or the opposition to what is going on in governance of the country right now. I really don't know. I don't understand it. It is well above my pay grade. And so I'm not going to try to confuse myself any further, that I'm confused right now, because our party has always been interested in collaborating with, in working with civil society organizations and other political parties who have an issue with the way in which the governance of the country is running and see the need for change, urgent change, as we need in the current circumstances of Dominica. So it seems the more we talk about the unification of purpose, the more we as a political party try our best to work with everybody and to have everybody working effectively together, the more we hear calls for the opposition to unite. And like I said, it's gotten to the stage right now where I'm confused. I don't understand what is going on. So if, for example, as you're saying, the United Workers' Party has a structure, and yes, we do. We try our best to be obedient to the rule of law of our party, the constitution of our party. We try our best to keep the structure in place. Quite unlike the Labour Party that has not had a delegates conference now for 10 years, we wonder how functional are the institutions within that political organization, but they're running government, and that's all that seems to matter. Where we are right now is you're suggesting we have an entity, an organization that can put a couple thousand people on the street. What we have always been doing is seeking to collaborate with those other entities that can put their own thousands together with the thousands that we're able to mobilize and get this big group of people across Dominica facing the power that is oppressing them. But it seems that we are stuck in one political party having the capability to mobilize and everybody else looking to find reasons why that political party maybe should do this or do that. Maybe step aside because in not stepping aside, other people are not being allowed to come to the fore. There's all sorts of confusion and we must face the issues head on. We talk about unification, but there are issues with people coming together and we must be honest and face those issues, what they are, because we're not going to go further without that. Sometimes it seems as though we dislike ourselves so much. We find a way to give comfort to the oppressor. We find a way to give comfort to those who are abusing our resources, disappearing our middle class, sinking us deeper and deeper into poverty. And instead of mending our fences, instead of putting our hands together, bringing our hearts together, we find ways to tear ourselves apart. Right in the opposition. So we have work ahead of us. There's no question about that. And I love the sentiments of this evening. I love the statements that have been made. I'm always aligned with them. It is just the reality that keeps hitting me in the face day in, day out. That forces me to ask, well, what is this all about? What are we doing?
You see, the difference between you and me is this. When you see any element of confusion start coming into my mind, I call Irving Andre. And I say to Irving Andre, do you believe that in terms of that mobilization, we should set up an international ring of Dominicans at home and abroad, form this network and put a structure in place so that we can raise funds? In other words, let's do like an Obama. And let's have a few thousand people at home and abroad who can do a little $10, and some of them might be able to do 50. There might be some business entities that might be able to do 1,000, 5,000. Let us have, if we have this moment when we decide, okay, listen, let's all come under a tent and let's do this on so and so date. We want to raise $100,000 so that we can mobilize everybody to do this and make sure everybody, can come along and be happy, and it is going to get done. If we get everybody at home and abroad that we can connect with to contribute to that, and if it is clear, publicly, when you raise those funds, that these funds are being raised, that people are contributing and committing their funds to it, I believe this perception, politics is about perception. The perception of a lot of those people will change. Irving Andre always taught me that. Irving, what do you think?
I think you're right, but I think you got your teachers kind of messed up, to be quite frank with you.
Oh, it wasn't
but
Irving?
Here's the point. Leadership is basically the sensitive measure of the extent to which you can sacrifice or you can subjugate your own self-interest to that of the common good. That is what basically leadership is about. And I understand the concerns Lennox is expressing, because in a small island democracy where you have different rivalries, you have different conflicts, you have a party that is buying everything, and if they can buy a pastor, if they can buy a priest, if they can buy a senior people in the legal business, then who else can they not buy? So this is what you have to contend with. But let us look at it from this fashion. These are issues, or if I was a biblical person, I would say these can precipitate a miracle of perfection. These are obstacles thrown in a way to see how much resources or how resourceful you are to overcome some of these issues. And this, in my view, is that how we have to look at those things. Here are issues that we have to overcome to achieve the promised land. And we have to tell ourselves that we have it within us to achieve those goals, irrespective of what is placed in our path. I tell you, when David, according to David's mother, when she found out David was going against Goliath, what she said, Imo, ifini bat. That is what David's mother said. Right? There was another one called Jonah. In some book I read, be in the belly of what? A whale or something. Don't ask me how Jonah got free from that one. Now, what if you were stricken with leprosy? And they sent you to, they banished you to that little leper's colony we used to have decades ago. There was no sense of redemption, no sense of rehabilitation, no sense of no hope of resurrection. But somehow, some man came and said, cast aside the demons of diseases. It's a biblical message, but it has a lot of application and resonance to us on the ground. There is hope, and the hope lies within us. And it may take a little time, yes, because these are mountains that we have to overcome. The fact of the matter is that where one entity can literally buy the allegiance of others, that is a momentous obstacle to be overcome, but it can be. If you start building one step at a time, if you start collecting funds, there's no penny again, but $1 at a time, if you start putting together an infrastructure of brotherhood, an infrastructure of unity based on a common philosophical purpose, irrespective of the minor differences or distinctions that you have, the goal may not be as formidable as it may appear. It's like building a house or buying an old house and renovating it. When you see what the amount of work you have to do, oh Christ, you say, my head not good. Probably it's not good too. I say that to myself all the time. But if you have a vision of what it's going to look like, if you have a vision of where you're going to take that edifice, then every impediment, every problem appears to just diminish because you're looking at the final goal. You're not being perturbed or disturbed by those periodic daily obstacles that appear to be thrown in your path to make you take or to make you abandon ship. So we have to look at it with that type of mindset, that type of mentality. One based on faith, one based on conviction, one based on religion, one based on resilience, one based on the realization that if I think it, I can have it. And that is what we have to do. Easier said than done, no doubt about that. But we have no choice. I mean, what more do we need to know based on those recent disclosures from that international consortium of journalists? The rot is even worse than what was disclosed by people like Lennox and Thompson and Lofty and everybody else, Alvin Thomas and Angelo before him, and so on and so forth. It means we have to redouble our efforts. And I'm not saying the journey is going to be easy. It will not be. But success is never something that is handed to you on a platter. It has to be fought for. And bear in mind what Eric Williams once said, success is the best revenge even those who mock you and try to trivialize you and ostracize you and penalize you and prosecute you and persecute you. Just think of it. Success is the best revenge. Thanks.
And thank you so much for that, Dr. Andre. As we come into down to winding down, Thompson, I wanted to get your further thoughts on this, what we're talking about here, because it seems to me, and our callers have been making it clear that that is what they think can cut it. It has to be a mass mobilization of people. It has to be a coming together, a unification. You're always going to get people of different ideas, different thoughts, and everybody wants to do something else. But there has to be a way to bring people together in a mindset. There has to be an objective which is bigger and greater than some of the objectives that the individuals have. That objective is saving this country. So we have to win the souls, the hearts and minds and the souls of the people of this country, soul of this nation, in order to get people to believe in a vision for change, for better living condition, better quality of life for the ordinary man. Thompson, your thoughts on how to really achieve some of this, and what do you think it's a good way to proceed? Because I said a moment ago, you need to put this out there, bring people together, and then you have to decide on to start with one event and raise money for that. And everybody have to get together and decide, look, we're going to try to contribute to raising money, form a network to raise money. It can be done. Like it can be done if people commit themselves to doing it. Your thoughts?
Yes, it can be done, Mr. T, Mr. G. But what you really need is a commitment from people, because what I found is that very often our people tend to give lip service. Yeah, they think that this should be done, but at the end of the day, when you go out there and you begin to call for support, I mean, for example, the times that we've been out there and we've gone to the public, it takes us, several hours of hard work to raise a couple $1,000s. So people tend not to be as forthcoming as I would expect them to be. So I think it takes a commitment, it takes a conviction from everybody that they have a role, that even if they may not be there physically, that they can contribute to the cause. And that is what I think very often that we are lacking. So we need to raise money for buses. We need to raise money for water. We need to raise money for other means to get people out there. There are people who are willing to come. They may not have the means to get there. Others should be able to come in and support. But we've always had this problem, I think, and I say problem, but we've always had probably not a problem, but always have had this roadblock where I don't find people are sufficiently forthcoming. The kind of efforts that we put into trying to raise funds for those types of events, where say it's a march or a protest and so on, we don't get that level of support. And that is where I think people need to literally put their money where the mouths are, because you get a lot of people on social media saying you need to do this, you need to do the other. But when you come and say, okay, now we're about to do something, give us your support, there is a problem. So I think it calls for a commitment, people to understand that whatever little that they can contribute or they can put forward will help in the cause, and that it's a good sign. It's a good thing to be able to put something in, as small as it is, to make that contribution. And I hope that when the call goes out next time for contributions to the cause, that people will step forward in a lot more numbers than we have seen up to this point, because the issues that we have before us, they need to be confronted, and we need that kind of support.
Lennox, as we wind down, I'm going to ask you to do your final comments, but I want to really visit that again, because I think it can be done. That's my view. I'm just a guy with a very positive mental attitude, and I think it can be done. But I think, again, as you got the commitment, you have to convince people to make that commitment. And you have to create that network of people who have the goodwill, who really want to see their country do better, see their people do better, to commit to being a part of that network. And this is something that you should discuss further. I'll be happy to whatever advice I can give, I'll be happy to give it on that. Whatever little I can, I'm prepared to do. But I think in the interest of the country, we need to get everybody together, all the opposition forces together, to do what is right for the country, create a better country. Then, what's your final thoughts on all of this?
In the interest of the country, the people, especially those in leadership positions, have to understand and appreciate they have a commitment to understand and appreciate that they don't have to like or dislike any particular individual or institution for them to be able to stand up for what is right for the country, for them to be able to stand where the interests of the country is being injured, where the resources of the country are being raped and plundered by a rogue political organization that needs to change. You don't have to like or dislike anybody or any institution for you to understand that, and for you to align yourself to the causes and to the movements and the programs and the actions that will free your country from that burden, that will excise that cancer from the body politic of your country. You don't have to like or dislike anybody for you to be able to stand for right in your country. And that's all I want to say this evening. So that within the opposition to what is going on right now, let's wake up tomorrow morning with a different sort of mindset. Let's really genuinely want to work together, even though we don't see eye to eye on everything. We're never going to be. We can unification in circumstance of diversity is part of a rule of nature. Unity in diversity. We don't have all to be different. I'm one of those people who have always promoted that institutions, political parties, and so on in opposition, they should continue to strengthen themselves. We don't all have to be one. We can strengthen ourselves individually and effectively work together as stronger individual units. Civil society organizations. But we have to stop standing in our way. We have to stop getting in our way of the progress we want to make for Dominica. Thank you, Sheridan. Thank you, Dr. Andre. Thank you, Dr. Fontaine. Lambi, thank you very much. God bless.
Yeah, here's what I'm thinking, Thompson, as you make your final remarks here, you're winding as we wind up, final comments. I'm thinking that what is going to be necessary is for people to be convinced that they love their country more than they might dislike an individual or another institution. That dislike or that dissatisfaction, something, is insignificant. It pales in comparison. You have to convince people that this pales in comparison to the objective they want to achieve in improving things in their country. That's a bigger picture for them. So, Thompson, as we wind down, your thought, because it seems to me, all the callers have been asking it right, there has to be some kind of forward movement to get collaboration.
Yes, indeed. And I think the moral for us is to understand that leadership does in fact matter. It is clear that this leadership that we now have in government in Dominica has not worked in the best interest of the people of Dominica. It has squandered millions and millions of dollars. It has put the country in jeopardy. It has harmed its own citizens by now making it more restrictive for its citizens to travel and get access to countries where they had access forever. And we need to understand that. And I believe that the people of Dominica, and in particular our labor right friends, those who have voted in the past for the Dominica Labour Party, I think it's time that they begin to put country first. You should not be so concerned about your party. It's important, and I'm talking directly to my labor right friends tonight. You have to understand that leadership matters. It will determine the way you spend your life. It will determine whether or not you'll be able to have your own home, or whether or not you will be struggling, having to parent all your life. It will determine whether or not you can go to sleep at night without having to worry about where your next meal is coming from. It matters. Leadership is what determines that, and who it is that is running your country. And so it is time for you to begin to examine your situation and consider whether or not, if with a different party, a different set of individuals in office, whether your life would have been different. And on that basis, you can then go to the polls. You can then go during election day and vote for the right person. And that's what it boils down to. It should not be that you love somebody, just love to see their face or so. It has to be what this individual can do for you. And if you're honest with yourself and you think of the past 23 years of your life in Dominica, of the struggles that you've gone through, of the way the country has been covered, if you're honest with yourself, you will admit that this government has failed. It has failed you. It has failed the people of the country. It has failed the young people. Just look at the young people with nothing to do, no jobs to go to, just on the wayside. The only gift given to them by this government is the freedom to smoke a spliff anywhere they wish. I mean, surely there should be more than this, than what we've been offered. And now, with that knowledge, you then begin to make the changes that are necessary. So when there is a call for protest, when there is a call for a march, you need to come out in support. When there is a call for support financially, you need to do your part so that all of that working together, we can make the change that is necessary in this country. Dominica has too much potential. Dominica has too much going for it that we can allow ourselves to be brought down this dark path that we are on. It's time for us to turn around. It's time for us to make that change. And it's time for us to support good governance in Dominica. Thank you, Mr. G, and thank you for the opportunity. Lambi, thank you. Great seeing you. Dr. Andre, it's a pleasure. And to all of our listeners, have a very, very good night indeed.
Yeah, thanks a lot for being with us here tonight. Dr. Andre, you have the final word, your closing remarks.
Well, Mr. G, let me thank you for inviting me, for associating with the poor in your choice of guests. Let me commend Dr. Fontaine, Mr. Linton for the wonderful presentations they made. Let me commend Lambi, who is always on duty, and let me commend Showing, and obviously yourself. Let me commend your listeners who stayed up quite late, quite frankly, to listen to the musings of persons who dream of something better than what obtains today. In a few weeks, we'll be celebrating as a nation our 45th.
Thompson, you might want to mute your mic, Thompson. Go ahead. Dan.
In a few weeks, we'll be celebrating our 45th anniversary as an independent, note the word please, independent nation. It's a time when normally we would take pride in the fact that we have health care for the majority of our population. We would take pride in the fact that our folks, those who toil, whether as farmers, as workers, public servants, public officers, sanitary officers, whether they're gainfully employed and earning a living wage. We would take pride in our institutions. We would take pride in our leaders. We would take pride in our agro industry. We would take pride on the strides made by our agriculture and the niche markets that we have, quite frankly, we have gained. We would take pride on perhaps being a young, aspiring nation, a little Singapore in gestation, where we are creating the kind of economy based on technology with respect to computers and in all its myriad forms. But what do we now have to deal with on this eve of this momentous anniversary occasion? Newspaper articles detailing the number of crooks and criminals and fugitives from justice who have our passports. The amount of money that should have been deposited under the consolidated fund, but which has found its way in mysterious accounts. According to one fellow called Zampoli, who was one of the beneficiaries, the extent to which foreigners have grown filthy rich in Dominica, while many Dominicans cannot afford to fix their roofs, destroyed almost 7 years, or is it 6 years, I believe, 2017 by Hurricane Maria. We're looking at a situation where the landscape is divided, blatant and toxic political partisanship, Our claim to be a nature island of the Caribbean is mocked almost on a daily basis when we see the derelict vehicles strewn on the sides of roads throughout Dominica. Our claim to be a nature island is mocked when we see how we treat our rivers, when we see what's going on in various parts of Dominica. Our claim to maintain the cultural integrity of our people is mocked when we see what's happening in Wesley. Our claim to preserve the architecture or the architectural heritage of Dominica is mocked when we see the state of the library, the governor's house or the governor's house or the prime minister's residence up at the Morn. Some of the old buildings, even those which connected to our past as the descendants of slaves, they've been ignored and they've left to basically wither away. When we see how we treat ourselves, our people, the discrimination and the persecution, when we see, even when we receive assistance to assist Dominicans in need, something which all the Eastern Caribbean eyes were doing in the thicket of COVID, and we could not muster not $100 to give to every household. Instead, what we did was to distribute these ubiquitous brown paper bags to the loyalists and those who maintain allegiance at any cost to their political masters. So when we sit in a few weeks' time and we ponder the significance of National Day, some of us will shake our heads with sorrow because it has no significance right now. It does not resonate in most of the people because they have nothing to show for 45 years of independence. And it is that reality, it is that crisis that should spur us to action, that should motivate us, that should inspire us and make us not just dream, because anyone can dream. Martin Luther King dreamt, but he took to the streets. He didn't just stay in his bedroom or his nice little porch and say, I have a dream, Gasso. This dream I dream in. He took to the streets to help to improve the lot of his people. And if Dominicans believe that some white knight will come on the horizon and do what they should be doing themselves, they are mistaken. There's no magic to what I'm saying. It's self-evident. It's not rocket science. That is why people get up early and go to their gardens and go to work to provide and for their families, to provide for themselves as best as they can, even in limited circumstances. But we have to create an environment where we create possibilities and we create the environment so that all can prosper and all shall eat. Rather, some rogue in Europe who is looking for a few dollars more on the backs of Dominicans. We have to change that narrative. We have to change that script. No one will change it for us, but there is hope and there is hope and there is hope. There is hope because people are taking small steps in bringing that reality or bringing that hope and that dream into reality. But what we need now is to get all those small steps to coalesce in one joyous reunion based on redemption, based on reinvigoration, based on resurrection, based on Lazarus's experience. But there is hope, but we have to work much harder. Just think of it, we have to challenge that phenomenon of the consolidated fund being run roughshod over by the diversion, fraudulent in my respectful view, into mysterious accounts. It can be done. In my view, legal arguments would support that argument. And we have a CCJ, quite frankly, which appears in its judgments to be concerned about the state of the Caribbean in terms of law and order, as opposed to the cynical rulings of judges, some judges, I should say, in our country, our island. So there is hope, but we have to climb that tree. We can't just stay under and wait for some cow or somebody to come and shake it. If we don't climb that tree, we will not harvest any fruit. So I say to our listeners, thanks for listening. There's work to do, to be done, but if we shall persevere, we shall succeed. And that is the message that we always must cling to, and it must always animate our actions. Even when things appear to be most hopeless, that should be a spur, not an impediment, to our energies transform the realities that confront us. So, good night to you. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Dr. Andre. Thank you, Lennox. Thank you, Thompson. And thank you so much to all the folks who are still with us on Facebook. We didn't acknowledge you later.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to the people of Dominica.
I certainly
Always a
want to
pleasure.
acknowledge all of you on
Love you all
Facebook.
the time.
And thanks, Thompson. Thanks, Irvin. Thanks, Lambie. Thanks, Sherwin. Thanks, Lennox. Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you very much. Take
Have a
care.
good
Okay, sure. Bye-bye.
Wonderful.
God bless. Good
Take
night.
care.
Looking out my window, and I'm a thinking of tomorrow, and I'm a wondering what the future will be. Thinking of the children who are the victims of oppression, beaten down by wars and eaten up by starvation. I'm ashamed when we, there's ugly will be over, and the children can go out and play. I wanna see when we, all oppression will be gone, and the people will rise up and say, freedom at last, freedom at last, so free, freedom has come, freedom has come, oh yeah. Sitting in seclusion, I'm in my meditation, and I can hear the voice of the sufferers cry for justice. Ooh, another ugly war is a raging, threats of nuclear war is arising, and the world is gripped by fear of mass destruction. I'm ashamed when we, there's ugly will be over, and the children can go out and play. I wanna see when we, all oppression will be done, and the people will rise up and show freedom at last, freedom at last. So free, freedom has come, freedom has come, oh yeah, oh yeah. So much blood, sage and sorrows. There is no future for the youths of tomorrow. So many mothers crying, too many funerals. Oh, love. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, looking out my window, and I'm a thinking of tomorrow.